You wake up, feeling proud of yourself. You made the switch. You stopped eating processed foods. You read every nutrition label, and you even replaced your sugary cereal with what you thought was the perfect breakfast. A bowl of oats, a splash of skim milk, maybe a spoonful of yogurt, and a glass of orange juice. It all looks clean, natural, and healthy. You sit down at the table, take a deep breath, and think, this is what taking care of yourself looks like. If this content touched something inside you, write, "I felt this" in the comments, and subscribe so you don't walk this journey alone. But deep down, something doesn't feel right. Because the moment you finish your meal, a familiar discomfort starts to build. A heaviness, a tight sensation in your chest, that slight burn in your throat. And before you even realize it, you're reaching for the antacid again, wondering why on earth you still feel this way when you're doing everything right. That's the paradox no one talks about. You're doing everything they told you to do. The magazines, the wellness blogs, the so-called health gurus, all praised these exact foods. But your body, it's not on board. And instead of feeling light, energized, and nourished, you feel bloated, irritated, and betrayed by your own stomach. The worst part? You start to blame yourself. You think maybe it's age, maybe it's stress, maybe it's your fault for not meditating enough or drinking enough water. But what if the problem isn't you at all? What if the problem is what you've been told is healthy? Let's talk about orange juice, that golden liquid that seems to scream health. It's in every breakfast commercial, every hotel buffet, every doctor's waiting room pamphlet. Full of vitamin C, they say. Immune boosting, they promise. But no one tells you that it's also one of the most acidic drinks you can put in your body, especially on an empty stomach. When you drink orange juice first thing in the morning, you're not just waking yourself up. You're pouring pure acid directly into a stomach that hasn't even started producing protective mucus yet. For someone with a sensitive gut, that's not a health boost. That's a chemical attack. And it doesn't stop there. Many people proudly start their mornings with a glass of water mixed with apple cider vinegar, believing it will cleanse the body. But if your stomach lining is already fragile, if you've been experiencing chronic reflux, mild gastritis, or any degree of inflammation, you're throwing fuel onto the fire. Vinegar might be antimicrobial, but it's also highly acidic. And if your gut is already struggling, what feels like a healing ritual might actually be a slow erosion, day after day. Now, picture the yogurt. A probiotic powerhouse, right? Except most people don't realize that even healthy yogurts often contain natural sugars or added fruit, and that dairy itself, especially when cold and processed, can trigger digestive symptoms in adults with subtle lactose sensitivity. You may not be fully intolerant, but even a mild inability to break down lactose can cause fermentation in the gut, leading to gas, bloating, and that frustrating acid that creeps up your throat and ruins the rest of your morning. You think it's the coffee, but it's not. It's what came before it. And then there's the bowl of oats. Rolled oats, steel-cut oats, instant oats. Doesn't matter. Oats are a staple of the healthy breakfast world. But no one warns you what happens when they're not paired with the right ingredient. When you mix them with skim milk, for example, you're combining two ingredients that can both ferment in a sensitive digestive system. Skim milk has no fat to slow down digestion, which means it moves through your gut too fast, sometimes undigested. And oats, when improperly prepared or overcooked, can turn sticky and heavy, creating a kind of paste that traps gas and delays stomach emptying. That's a recipe for bloating, cramps, and, yes, acid reflux, not relief. You think back to when the symptoms started. It wasn't after fast food. It wasn't after a night of pizza or soda. It was after your clean eating journey began. And that's what makes it so confusing, so frustrating, so painful. Because when you're trying to do better and you still feel worse, you begin to lose trust in your body. You question your instincts. You fall into the trap of thinking, maybe this is just how aging feels. But that's a lie, too. Your body is not failing you. It's trying to protect you. That tightness in your throat, that burning in your chest, That fatigue after eating? It's your body's way of begging you to stop, to reevaluate, to unlearn. Because not all foods that are marketed as healthy are safe for every stomach, especially not yours. And the issue isn't just the food, it's the timing, the combinations, and the state of your gut. If your microbiome is out of balance, if your gut lining is inflamed, if your digestion is compromised, even a banana can backfire. Even a bowl of soup can feel like fire. People often think inflammation shows up in dramatic ways. A rash, a fever, a diagnosis. But the truth is, for millions of adults, especially over the age of 50, inflammation is quiet. It whispers. It shows up as subtle reflux that doesn't go away, as chronic fatigue after meals, as a general sense that food no longer feels like fuel. It feels like a burden. And that's the core wound we have to look at. Because when your stomach hurts, it doesn't just affect your digestion, it affects your energy, your mood, your sleep, your relationship, your desire to eat, to move, to live. Chronic discomfort drains your confidence, makes you fearful of food, and slowly disconnects you from your own body. You start skipping meals not because you're fasting, but because you're afraid of what eating will feel like. And that kind of fear isn't just physical, it's emotional. And it starts with what you've been told to trust, a healthy breakfast. But what if the truth is more personal than that? What if your body is begging for a different kind of health, one that actually listens to your symptoms instead of ignoring them in favor of a diet trend? What if healing your stomach doesn't start with a new food, but with removing the ones that hurt you most, even if they have a health halo? And what if that quiet discomfort you've been feeling all these years, the reflux, the bloating, the tiredness, is not random, but the result of years alimenting a fire that could have been put out a long time ago? Let's keep going. You've been living with this quiet battle in your body, and most days you don't even talk about it. Because how do you explain to someone that your healthy lifestyle is what's hurting you? You walk down the supermarket aisle with determination. You skip the processed snacks, ignore the frozen meals, and head straight for the health food section. There they are, the organic granolas, gluten-free cereals, sugar-free yogurts, almond milks, and those neatly stacked protein bars made with ingredients you can barely pronounce but we're told are good for you. You place them in your cart with pride, thinking you're rebuilding your health, but your body disagrees. You eat them, and that old sensation creeps back in. The burning, the bloating, the tightness in your stomach that no supplement ever seems to fix. So you start experimenting. You cut the orange juice. You switch from skim milk to almond milk. You even try going dairy-free and gluten-free. But still, something doesn't sit right. That's when you begin to question everything. Because when nothing seems to help, you're forced to look deeper. Not just at what you're eating, but how your body is reacting. And this is where most people miss the point. Food isn't just fuel. It's chemistry. It's a dialogue with your gut. And sometimes, even the right foods send the wrong signals. Let's talk about fermentation. Not the trendy kind, like kombucha or kimchi. We're talking about internal fermentation. The kind that happens when your digestive system struggles to break down a food. And instead of processing it, your gut bacteria turn it into gas. Literally, this gas pushes upward, creating pressure, acid reflux, and that constant feeling of fullness even hours after you eat. You may not realize it, but that morning bowl of oatmeal paired with fruit or nut butter can actually ferment in your stomach if you have slow digestion or low stomach acid, two things that become more common as we age. Especially after 50, your body doesn't produce the same levels of digestive enzymes or hydrochloric acid. So even healthy carbohydrates, when not broken down properly, turn into gas-producing substances. This is why you feel heavy after a meal that looked light. Then there's the issue of food combining, a concept many dismiss until they experience it firsthand. When you mix certain foods that digest at different speeds, like fruits and grains, or proteins and starchy carbs, your stomach becomes confused. It tries to process everything at once, but instead ends up overwhelmed. That's when the fermentation starts. The gas builds, the acid rises, and you're left wondering if something is seriously wrong, when in fact, the problem is simply the combination on your plate. Think about that for a second. You could be eating all the right things, but in the wrong order, or in the wrong combination for your specific digestion. Now let's look at dairy alternatives. Almond milk, oat milk, soy milk, marketed as gut-friendly, vegan, and better than traditional dairy. But are they really? Most almond milks sold in supermarkets are packed with gums, thickeners, and preservatives like carrageenan, which has been linked to gut irritation and inflammation in sensitive individuals. Oat milk, meanwhile, is often loaded with added sugars to enhance flavor. And since oats themselves can ferment in the gut, this creates a double trigger for people with reflux or sluggish digestion. Even unsweetened varieties can cause problems if your gut lining is already compromised. That slight itching in your throat after a smoothie, the sudden fatigue after a light breakfast. It might not be the food, but how it's interacting with your body's defenses. And this brings us to the concept of individual inflammation. Not everyone reacts the same way to food. Two people can eat the same meal and have completely different experiences. One feels nourished. The other feels like they swallowed a rock. That's because inflammation doesn't always show up on tests. It doesn't always come with a fever or rash. It often starts with small signals: heartburn after a salad, fatigue after a fruit bowl, fogginess after yogurt. You might think, but I've been eating this way for years. Exactly. That's part of the problem. Inflammation builds. It's not immediate. You may not feel it after one meal, but after 1,000 meals, the damage accumulates. The gut lining gets thinner. The protective mucus decreases. Your stomach acid weakens. And eventually, even the most innocent foods become triggers. Your body stops recognizing them as nourishment. Instead, it treats them like invaders. That's when you start seeing what many call random symptoms: chronic burping, persistent throat clearing, pressure under the ribs, bloating that makes your clothes feel tight by mid-morning, a strange sour taste in your mouth hours after eating. These aren't coincidences. These are warning signals that your body is trying to adapt to something it was never meant to tolerate long-term. And ignoring them doesn't make them disappear. It just turns them into something worse: GERD, ulcers, SIBO, silent reflux, gastritis. But here's the twist. Most people try to fix these symptoms by adding more fiber, more probiotics, more gut health powders. And in many cases, that only makes things worse. Because if your gut is inflamed, what it needs is less. Less confusion, less overload, less strain. It's like trying to repair a burned hand by rubbing it with sandpaper. You're trying to help, but the method is only deepening the wound. There's a reason your body is pushing back. A reason those healthy foods leave you feeling worse. Because healing isn't about following trends. It's about listening, not to influencers, not to food packaging, but to your symptoms, your patterns, your body's signals. And those signals are telling you that what's been labeled good might be doing more harm than good, at least for you. So what do you do when your body rejects the rules you've been taught to follow? You stop, you reassess, and you begin to rebuild, not from a place of fear, but from awareness. You begin removing the silent triggers, the acidic drinks, the fermenting carbs, the overhyped superfoods that are super for everyone else, except you. And in doing so, you start to notice the shifts, the way your stomach softens after meals, the way your breath feels easier, the way you wake up without dread. Not because you found a miracle product, but because you stopped feeding the fire. And that single decision to stop trusting the label and start trusting your body becomes the real beginning of healing. You've spent years collecting advice, books, documentaries, blogs, nutritionists, even well-meaning family members, all offering a different version of the perfect diet. You tried low-fat in the 90s, went high-protein in the 2000s, flirted with plant-based, and even gave intermittent fasting a shot. Each time, you adjusted your meals, restricted certain foods, followed rules, and each time, You hoped this would be the one, the approach that would finally bring peace to your stomach, clarity to your mind, and comfort to your life. But the peace never lasted, because every time you tried to fix your health with food, you were handed another set of guidelines that weren't written for your body, your history, your biology. And here's the truth: very few people say out loud, even the best advice can become dangerous when it doesn't fit the person following it. Think about how often you've heard that whole grains are essential: brown rice, oats, whole wheat bread, quinoa. But what no one tells you is that these grains contain compounds called phytates and lectins, natural plant defenses, that can irritate the gut lining of sensitive individuals. When your digestive system is already inflamed, introducing these healthy carbs can feel like rubbing salt on an open wound. And the worst part is, your symptoms don't show up immediately after you eat. They show up slowly, hours later, even days later, making it almost impossible to trace them back to what you consumed. You start blaming other things: stress, poor sleep, hormones, but deep down, your body knows. It always knew. Now let's talk about fiber. Everyone says it's necessary for digestion, for bowel movement, for heart health. And in a healthy gut, it truly is. But for someone dealing with inflammation, dysbiosis, or sluggish digestion, certain types of fiber, especially from raw vegetables or whole grains, can act like sandpaper in the gut. You think you're giving your body what it needs, but all you're doing is scratching an already irritated surface. How many times have you eaten a big salad and felt heavy, bloated, or even nauseous afterward? That wasn't cleansing. That was your gut begging you to slow down. And what about fruit? Nature's candy, they say, full of antioxidants, they say. But if you're dealing with small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, SIBO, candida imbalance, or slow gastric emptying, fruit, especially the high-sugar kinds like bananas, mangoes, or grapes, can ferment inside you and become a playground for the very bacteria causing your discomfort. You're not broken. You're not reacting badly to food. You're reacting to inflammation. And once your system is inflamed, even the most nutritious ingredients can act like poison. Let's take this even further. Have you ever noticed how your symptoms change based on the time of day you eat? You may feel okay eating a certain meal at noon, but the exact same meal causes acid reflux or bloating when you eat it at night. That's not in your head. Your body's ability to produce digestive enzymes, stomach acid, and motility rhythms follows a circadian rhythm, which means your gut function literally changes depending on the time of day, your stress level, your hydration status, and even your posture. So no, you're not crazy for feeling worse at night. You're not making it up. Your body is just responding to 1,000 subtle variables at once. And unfortunately, most diet rules don't take those into account. Now let's look at the idea of portion control. You've probably been told to eat small meals throughout the day to prevent reflux or indigestion. But for some people, that constant grazing means your digestive system never gets a break. It stays in a perpetual state of low-level activity, never fully digesting, never fully resting. Over time, this leads to incomplete breakdown of food, fermentation, gas, and even delayed gastric emptying, which is a major contributor to acid reflux. On the other hand, large meals, especially ones rich in carbs and fats, can overwhelm the stomach's capacity, leading to excessive acid production, bloating, and the classic brick-in-your-belly sensation. This is where mindfulness meets biology. Because when you slow down, chew properly, and truly pay attention to your body's hunger and fullness signals, you begin to realize that your body does know how much it needs. The problem is, most of us have been taught to ignore those signals in favor of rules, apps, and calorie trackers. And this brings us to one of the most misunderstood concepts in gut health: the emotional impact of digestion. When you eat in a stressed state, rushed, distracted, anxious, your body shuts down digestion. Literally, blood flow is diverted away from your stomach, stomach acid production drops, and peristalsis, the movement of food through your intestines, slows down. This is why so many people feel fine while they're eating, but terrible afterward, because their bodies weren't ready to digest. And now the food just sits there, fermenting, causing pressure, gas, and eventually reflux. But here's the deeper problem. Most people are always in a low-level stress state. They eat while watching the news. They eat while scrolling their phones. They eat while arguing, rushing, multitasking. And their bodies never get the chance to activate the rest and digest mode. Instead, they remain stuck in survival mode, where digestion is never prioritized. This isn't about meditation. It's about attention. Your body doesn't just digest what you eat. It digests how you eat. And if you're eating in fear, in guilt, or under pressure, your food becomes a source of trauma rather than nourishment. And the irony? Most people dealing with chronic digestive discomfort feel guilty because they're trying so hard. They've eliminated sugar, dairy, gluten. They've tried probiotics, supplements, cleanses. They've read all the labels, followed all the trends. But still, they hurt. And that pain becomes personal. It becomes shame. But there's nothing to be ashamed of. Your body isn't punishing you. It's protecting you. Every burp, every pang, every moment of discomfort is your gut waving a flag, telling you something doesn't belong. And it's only when you stop blaming yourself, stop chasing more products, more advice, more restriction, that you start to hear what your body is really trying to say. Because healing doesn't begin with adding more. It begins with subtracting what's causing harm, even when that harm comes disguised as health. Even when it's in a glass of juice, a bowl of oats, or a carton of almond milk that promise to heal you. And it's only when you dare to question those promises that you begin to find what your body truly needs. There's a moment, one that happens quietly, when you begin to suspect that the symptoms you've been calling minor aren't so minor anymore. Maybe it's the way your chest tightens after every meal, or the fact that your pants feel tighter by mid-morning even when you didn't eat much. Maybe it's that sharp little burn in your throat that started as an occasional annoyance but now shows up every single day, like a shadow you can't shake. It creeps in subtly, a sour taste after breakfast, a burp that tastes like what you ate 2 hours ago, a tension under your ribs that you can't stretch away. And the more it happens, the more you start to wonder, is this just what aging feels like? Is this my new normal? But deep down, something inside you says no, this isn't normal. This is your body trying to tell you that something's off, and it's been trying for a long time. You see, the stomach is more than a place where food is broken down. It's a sensitive, highly intelligent part of your body that responds not only to what you eat, but to how you live. And when it starts to send out distress signals, it's never random. It's specific, strategic, almost like it's begging you to pay attention. One of the first and most overlooked signals is chronic throat clearing. You might brush it off as just allergies or dry air, but for many people, it's actually silent reflux, a form of acid reflux that doesn't present with heartburn. Instead, it irritates the throat, sinuses, and even the ears. It's what causes that itchy tickle at the back of your throat that never quite goes away. You think it's post-nasal drip, but in reality, it's your stomach acid creeping up slowly, silently, and doing damage where you can't see it. Then there's the lump in the throat sensation, known medically as globus. You've probably felt it, like something stuck, even when there's nothing there. It's not always anxiety, as people love to say. It can be inflammation from acid, constantly irritating the upper esophagus until your body creates tension as a form of protection. You start drinking more water, clearing your throat more often, adjusting how you swallow. But it doesn't go away, because the root isn't in your throat. It's deeper. Another quiet signal, burping after simple meals. We're not talking about soda-induced belching. We're talking about clean meals, boiled veggies, plain chicken, a light breakfast that still produce excess gas. That's often a sign of low stomach acid, not high. When you don't produce enough acid, food doesn't break down efficiently. It sits, it ferments, it creates gas that rises up, carrying with it small amounts of acid that irritate your esophagus without ever feeling like full-blown heartburn. The irony? Many people are given antacids for this, which makes it worse by further lowering stomach acid and creating a cycle of poor digestion and increased symptoms. You begin to feel it in your energy levels too. Meals that used to give you fuel now drain you. You finish eating and want to lie down. You start avoiding social lunches. You get irritable when it's time to eat. Not because you're hungry, but because you're afraid of how your body will respond. And that fear leads to something even deeper: disconnection. You stop trusting your hunger cues. You no longer know what to eat or when to eat. You become hyper-focused on food labels, researching every ingredient, bouncing from one diet to another. But nothing seems to help. And so you begin shrinking your meals, skipping breakfast, eating less and less, hoping that eating light will also mean feeling light. But restriction isn't the same as healing. Because when your stomach is inflamed, even water can cause discomfort. Even bland food can feel sharp. And this is where so many people give up. They think, if even healthy food hurts, there's nothing left for me to do. But that's not the truth. The truth is, your gut doesn't need more complexity. It needs simplicity, calm, a break from the constant guessing and testing. It needs safety, foods that don't trigger fear, ingredients that don't require detective work, habits that don't punish your system further. It might surprise you, but some of the most soothing practices aren't in the food itself, but in how you interact with food. Let's take posture, for example. Sitting hunched over while eating or reclining right after meals can put pressure on the lower esophageal sphincter, the valve that keeps stomach acid where it belongs. When that valve is weakened or compressed, acid escapes upward more easily. Something as simple as sitting upright while eating and remaining upright for 30-45 minutes after a meal can significantly reduce reflux episodes. No medication needed, just body awareness. Or consider breathing. Most people breathe shallowly throughout the day, especially when stressed. Shallow breathing keeps your body in fight or flight mode, which slows digestion. Deep diaphragmatic breathing, where your belly rises and falls slowly, signals your nervous system to switch into rest and digest. Practicing 5 deep breaths before eating can radically shift your digestion, helping your stomach prepare for the meal rather than panic through it. Even your chewing habits play a role. Digestion starts in the mouth. Chewing thoroughly not only breaks down food physically, but it also stimulates the release of saliva, which contains enzymes that start breaking down starches. Rushed eating means larger food particles enter the stomach, placing more strain on the digestive process and increasing the likelihood of fermentation, gas, and reflux. Simply slowing down and chewing each bite 20 to 30 times can ease symptoms dramatically without a single change to your diet. And that brings us to one of the most misunderstood elements of digestive healing: hydration timing. Many people sip water constantly during meals, thinking it helps. But excessive water while eating can dilute stomach acid, making digestion weaker, especially in people already struggling with low acid. Instead, drinking most of your fluids between meals and only sipping small amounts while eating can improve stomach environment, reduce bloating, and enhance enzyme efficiency. When you begin to see digestion as a full-body process, not just about food, but also posture, breath, mindset, and rhythm, you start to unlock a different path to healing. A path based not on restriction, but on regulation, not on fear, but on observation. Your body doesn't need you to be perfect. It needs you to be present. Because the most powerful healing doesn't come from eliminating every possible irritant. It comes from noticing what your body responds to, what makes it feel calm, what creates pressure, what brings relief. Healing isn't linear. It's not a straight road with clear signs. It's a daily dialogue. And when you start to truly listen, your body starts to speak more clearly. And what it's asking for right now isn't another diet. It's peace, simplicity, and above all, relief. Healing doesn't start with a grocery list. It doesn't begin with a new superfood or the latest supplement that promises to fix your gut. Real healing often begins in silence. The moment you sit with yourself and admit that what you've been doing isn't working, that the way you've been taught to treat your body, to fight your symptoms, it's only made you more disconnected, more frustrated, and more confused. But here's the truth. Healing is still possible, even if you've felt this way for years, even if your symptoms have become part of your identity, even if you can't remember what it feels like to eat without fear. And it starts with subtraction, not addition. The first thing your body is begging you to subtract is chaos, nutritional chaos. Too many ingredients, too many combinations, too much experimentation without clarity. When your gut is already inflamed, the last thing it needs is complexity. It needs calm, repetition, predictability. That's why mono meals with just one or two easy-to-digest foods, can be so powerful during flare-ups. A bowl of well-cooked zucchini, a ripe banana, a little white rice with a drizzle of olive oil. These aren't flashy meals, but they're soft, safe, and stabilizing. And in that calm, your body starts to breathe again. It no longer has to guess, decode, or defend itself. It can simply digest. This is when the fire starts to die down. Now, let's talk about one of the simplest yet most overlooked tools for gut repair: warmth. Warm foods are easier to digest than cold ones. It's a basic biological truth, but one most people forget. Cold smoothies, raw salads, ice water, they might feel healthy, in theory, but for a compromised digestive system, they're shocking. Imagine trying to wash your hands with freezing water in the middle of winter. Your skin tightens, your muscles contract. That's what happens inside your gut when you bombard it with cold. But when you offer warmth, herbal teas, cooked vegetables, gentle broths, everything softens. Blood flow improves. Digestion becomes more efficient. Your body feels safe again. That's why traditional healing systems like Ayurveda and traditional Chinese medicine place so much emphasis on food temperature, texture, and timing. Not because they're ancient, but because they've observed what modern diets ignore. The gut thrives on rhythm and warmth, not stimulation and shock. And speaking of rhythm, let's look at your daily routine. If your meals are scattered, rushed, or inconsistent, your digestive system never develops a pattern. It's constantly guessing. Should it produce acid now? Should it start peristalsis? Is food coming in 1 hour or 5? That unpredictability causes confusion, and confusion creates stress, which worsens symptoms. But when you start to eat at roughly the same times each day, even simple meals begin to feel more nourishing. Because the body anticipates them, it prepares, it welcomes food instead of reacting to it. Even sleep impacts your stomach more than you realize. Poor sleep reduces the production of melatonin, a hormone that doesn't just regulate your brain, but also helps modulate the production of stomach acid and the function of the lower esophageal sphincter. That means sleep deprivation isn't just tiring. It literally weakens your ability to keep acid in the stomach, making nighttime reflux more likely. And when you sleep right after eating, or recline on the couch to rest after dinner, you're fighting gravity, the single most important factor in keeping acid where it belongs. That's why elevating the head of your bed, or staying upright for 2 to 3 hours after your last meal, can do more for reflux than any antacid ever will. But maybe the most transformative step in this entire process is learning to stop fearing food, because fear is its own form of inflammation. Every time you sit down to eat and brace yourself, every time you analyze your plate with suspicion, every time you feel a twinge of guilt over what you ate, your body hears that. It responds to it. And that fear triggers the same stress responses as a physical threat. Your digestion shuts down, your blood vessels constrict, your gut tenses, and even the most benign meal becomes difficult to process. So the real healing begins not just with changing your food, but with changing your relationship to it. Start with what we call foundation meals. Simple, warm, nourishing meals that don't cause symptoms. Build trust again. Let your body feel what it's like to eat without drama. Maybe it's a bowl of soft carrots with a drizzle of coconut oil. Maybe it's cooked apples with cinnamon. Maybe it's chicken and white rice. The specifics don't matter as much as the safety, because when your body feels safe, it starts to repair. Your gut lining begins to regenerate. Your nerves calm down. Your stomach acid starts producing at the right time, in the right amount. Your meals stop feeling like battles and start feeling like moments of peace. And over time, you realize something extraordinary. You don't need a perfect diet. You need clarity. You need consistency. You need to listen, not to trends, but to truth. And the truth is, the foods that were marketed to you as healthy, the cold yogurts, the acidic juices, the fast-acting fiber cereals, might be part of why you're still in pain. Not because they're inherently bad, but because your body right now is in a different phase. A phase that needs healing, not performance. Repair, not optimization. Grounding, not stimulation. And when you honor that, everything changes. You start waking up without that tight feeling in your chest. You eat without immediately scanning your body for reactions. You go through your day with more energy, more comfort, more confidence. Not because you discovered some miracle ingredient, but because you finally removed what was silently hurting you. And in that removal, you gave your body permission to do what it always wanted to do: heal. If this resonated with you, and you're ready to take the next step in restoring your gut health naturally, gently, and wisely, there's another video waiting for you right now, right here on the screen. Watch it next, and let's keep rebuilding together. Thank you for trusting your process. Now, let your body feel what peace tastes like.